Welcome back to another episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. My special guest today is an old friend of mine, Wolfgang Angyal from Riedel, Japan. And Wolfgang and I have known each other for many years. I'm Greg Story, your host today, president of Dale Carnegie Training Japan. And Wolfgang, welcome. Thank you very much. We're set up very beautifully today in the tasting room for Riedel here in Aoyami Chome. Very beautiful room, and so I appreciate that. And how does a nice Austrian boy like you wind up in Japan running probably the second largest operation for Riedel in the world? How did that happen? How did you get here? And tell us the background.
Well, great to see you, Greg. Thanks for having me. The first time I came to Japan was in 1985. And I was sent as part of a delegation from Austria to represent Austria in the Skill Olympics, which is a competition that is held every 3-4 years around the world, organized by the Chamber of Commerce's to have the vocational skill levels compared up to the age of 21. So I was representing Austria in the hotel restaurant service category. My original background is in the hospitality industry. And luckily, I won the competition.
Congratulations!
In my category. So, and I would already contribute that gold medal that was it at the time to the fact that it was held in Japan.
Oh, why did that make a difference?
Because everybody was assigned assistants. Every competitor got the Swiss, the German, the Japanese, the Dutch, the British. They got 2-3 assistants assigned to them to help them with organizing materials and different products from the backyards for the competition, because you couldn't do it all yourself. So you had to rely on others to actually get things for you. And it was quite apparent to me that the difference between me and the Swiss and the German, who probably were technically superior to me, I could see how they were working, and I could see how they did certain things much quicker on their own, much more proficient in what they were doing. And I think it was because of the assistants that I trusted to do things for me, rather than do everything for myself, like the Swiss and the German did. I think that's actually what got me the gold. And this is also
that's interesting. Why did you have that in your mind? I'm in Japan. It's a foreign country. I've never been here before. I don't know any of these assistants. They're, speaking some degree of English, perhaps not so great, and you don't speak any Japanese, and you are going to trust them in this competition. What was in your mind to make that decision? Because that's quite different from what you're saying to other people who are doing.
Well, they didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak any Japanese.
Zero. Okay, good.
So you had to use kind of nonverbal communication to get things done. It was obviously a lot easier for the Japanese competitor. But I would contribute that to two factors. And one takes me back to when I was 4 years old. When I was a young boy, and I was quite tall and strong for my age. So I did use that to my advantage to beat the other kids or to wrestle them down. So my father decided this boy needs to let off steam, and so he sent me to a Judo dojo.
I went to the dojo on Judo, okay.
And there I really learned what's coming in contact with Japan for the first time, and that was very, very fascinating. Mm-hmm. You had to bow before the fight, and you had to bow after the fight. Even you lost. That was like concepts like humility or respect was not concepts that I was familiar with. So that was the first time that I got sort of a glimpse of what Japan is, and I was fascinated with that. And the second factor, I think it was, funny enough, the Shogun series of the 80s. We may remember
James
with Richard
Clavell's novel. Yes. Yeah.
And you could see different Japanese principles, values being represented in that series, and you got a glimpse of that. And when I came to Japan for the competition, I think that was subconsciously was able to draw from that. And for me, it was clear that these 3 assistants were there to help me and not to trip me up to give the Japanese competitor an advantage.
Right.
And I could see that the German and the Swiss were just not doing that. So I had all my time in front of the jury, and they were in the backyard doing things.
Doing stuff, right. So that's a fantastic experience. Gold medal winner, terrific. You had that Japan interest background, obviously. So how did you actually get back here after winning the competition?
Well, that was a bit like the salmon going back to where it was born. So I had this feeling, this kind of immediate affinity with Japan. So I tried everything to get back here. I would have done anything, and I was writing resumes to hotels and restaurants and dropped them at the airport. Maybe they could pick it up and would take me on to wash dishes or something, because it was my goal was to come back to Japan. So it took me 3 years to find a way, and it was then the Tsuji Academy in Osaka, which was the venue where the event actually was held. They offered me to work for them and to offer me a 1-year lecture position at the school to teach the students and to do some commercial activities. And
so what year are we in now?
That was in 88, so 3 years later.
So you're in Osaka?
Osaka.
In 88?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was great to be in Japan, but it was really quite a shock for both parties, for me and for my surroundings at the school, and I probably did everything wrong that you could go wrong, and I was like an elephant in a porcelain shop, basically destroying, making collateral damage left, right, and center without even realizing it. So I couldn't really stay there because there was too much damage done, and I feel still very sorry for everybody there. I still have good contacts with them, and they have forgiven me since then, but still good relations, but I had to leave, and before that, I knew I would not want to stay in education, although I love teaching, I love to stand in front of students.
And you're very good too. I've been in the receiving end or on the receiving end of your tastings that you do for Riedel, and you are very good. You're great. I'd love to have you in Dale Carnegie, teaching for Dale Carnegie. You've got the real facilitation skills. So I can imagine you would have been very good in the classroom.
With pleasure. But again, I was not really doing what I could have done because I was in the classroom. I was just driving home techniques. And I didn't actually realize that I was driving home techniques, even with this gold medal around my neck, in the country with the most sophisticated service culture in the world. And I only realized that later, and it was quite a revelation. But that's a different tangent. So I was at Tsuji. I wanted to leave. I went to contact Riedel, because Riedel I was familiar with from my early days in working in a hotel. So I was probably washing already 1,000 glasses before I realized it was a very sophisticated product. It's a product that I thought I could really identify with. So I contacted Riedel because it was my hometown. And I was, I think, 21 years old. And it was not that he threw me out of the office, the owner, but was a bit like that. Had the wrong shoes, was dressed the wrong way, was a cocky young man, full of himself, and probably gave him off a very bad impression. But who could blame him? You know, who would want to send somebody at 21 years old to Japan when he was already there for 10 years? You know, hitting certain walls, and there was nothing a young person could do. But then I was in Japan. And I didn't give up because I thought that brand had a potential in Japan, and I knew the product. I had a feeling of I knew what to do, and I went to the importer at that time, and the importer then invited the owner, Georg Riedel, to come to Japan. We had a meeting, and then it was concluded that I would start working for the importer to start promoting Riedel to restaurants. At that time, was very, very new.
So you're in a type of business development role.
Yes.
Which is sales to restaurants for a new product they probably don't know.
Yes.
Which is never easy in Japan. So how did that go?
No, that was a revelation because the Tsuji Academy was a very traditional company, But I was already in the 3 years in Austria. I was working in hotel supplies, and I was working in sales, in PR, and did some writing. So I had event management, which was all kind of related to what Riedel would do later on, and took those experiences and tried to apply them. But the company was a very small company in Japan with wholesale business and a retail business. I think they had 5 shops at the time.
How many people did they have at that time?
I think about 20 or 30 people.
How many we are today?
That's not the company that we have today. That was a different company.
Okay.
That was the subsidiary of it was not a Riedel Japan at the time.
Oh, okay.
That was the importer. That was a subsidiary of the
okay.
importer.
Okay. Well, and let's compare to Riedel today. The company
about
owns
3 times. 3 times.
3 times bigger, so it's huge now. Okay,
yes.
please go on.
So, but, the owner of the company just gave me I asked, what do you need? And it was very agile. So it was very like entrepreneur, owner operating, and was not really sure if selling Riedel to restaurants was the right way to go. But the owner, Riedel, the owner, really wanted to approach restaurants.
And Riedel's a family company in 265 years of history, right? So
Yes.
there's a bit of a difference when the family owns the business and what they want.
Yes.
It tends to get done, I suppose.
Yes. Well, it's 11th generation, still owned and operated by the family.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, why that is possible. And it's kind of in the DNA of the brand. And the family motto is stoke the fire, don't save the ashes.
Oh, stoke the fire, don't save the ashes.
Yes,
wow, okay.
because in the glass business, you can never let the fire go out. If the fire goes out, in manufacturing, you can scale up, you can scale down. In glass manufacturing, the oven always burns. So when there's a saying, in the glass business, in handmade production, it's the craftsmen that get very hot.
Yeah.
With machine-made production, it's the salespeople that get very hot.
Right, right.
Because the thing just keeps churning out product.
Yeah.
So there is quite some wisdom over, starting in the industrial age with the company, in the company that also I was over the time had access to that helped me along the way, I think, to make things work. But coming back to Japan.
Yeah, well, you're working for the subsidiary company, you're going to restaurants,
Yes.
you're trying to get the product in the restaurants. So how did that go?
I asked what I need. I need some restaurants that you would recommend that I should visit. And I wanted a case. I asked them to make a case because I needed to bring product with me. So I asked them to tailor a case for me, where it had the handmade line, the machine-made line, that I could even put a small bottle of wine in there for some tasting. On-site tasting. And I was running around restaurants, made cold calls to restaurants. I had my speech down pat.
In which language?
In Japanese.
So you learned enough Japanese by this time?
I learned enough Japanese on the phone to get the appointment.
Wow, well done.
And I never got refused.
Oh, wow.
Because I think it was the late 80s.
Right.
So, how many times a restaurateur would have gotten a call from some crazy foreigner about visiting him? Yeah. And I had always made sure that I had an introduction, means that I could refer to somebody on the phone that they knew, that gave me their name and introduced me to them. So I knew that would be necessary to be even heard. And I think a lot of them actually bought their first glasses more out of pity for this guy sweating with his case, coming to their restaurant or waiting for 2 hours for them really. to get heard. Wow. Or some of them maybe were admiring the effort. Those things I only learned later, but because for me it was just the goal to get it out there. So that was the first experience on the shop floor, really.
Right. And so where do we go from there?
Then I was in this company for 3 years, and then we changed the agent. The importer at that time, when we went to a bigger company, it was Meiwa Trading, was a part of the Mitsubishi Group. So the managers at Mitsubishi Group were almost insisting that I would be working inside the company, because they knew that the key thing to success of the brand within the group or within that company was to sell it within the company.
Yeah.
Not to sell it to customers, to actually sell it to their own people. Because it was a wine glass with a thin stem. Nobody could get it into their cabinets. I mean, in the late 80s, people were saying, people don't drink wine. You will fail with this brand because they don't have the space. They have small houses. So it was important to promote it within the company first, and that took me 3 years to establish the brand within the Meiba distribution in Japan. And
so you're talking to group companies, people, or you're talking?
Yes, the general merchandise division, different divisions within the group.
Within the group, the different divisions.
They had a sales company that I had to work with that was dealing with department stores. There was the hotel and restaurant hospitality sector that I brought into the business, that I sort of integrated into that business. So that's also what they wanted me to do, to bring that business to them, because they were not specialized in hospitality sector. So there was certain things that we could add value to them. That's why they also took on the brand.
And how did you find it? Now, you're working in, how many people in that company?
Oh, there was thousands.
Thousands, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Bucho,
Huge.
Cacho, Cacaricho, the whole army-style
The whole
hierarchy. Yeah.
very conservative, hierarchical, old style, crusty Japanese-style company. Here you are, a foreigner, working inside there, trying to convince people who probably don't even drink wine themselves, probably don't even own a wine glass at home. They're probably using just a normal glass, if they drank wine at all, to say, hey, listen, we've got something very special here. That must have been unbelievably hard to get them on site.
Yes, I mean, that was the main challenge. So even though they didn't drink wine, there was always, we always had to, and we still do the same thing today. It is based on tasting it. If you taste the difference, experiential. If you taste the difference between one and another glass of drinking the same beverage, you will never forget. Yeah. It will be ingrained in your memory. And you can do the same with green tea. You don't have to use wine. You can do it with sake. You can do it with any other beverage. You can do it with water. You can make a demonstration that the shape of a glass makes a difference to the appreciation of that beverage. And once you have that, you kind of reach them on an emotional level, because smells and tastes are very close to the emotional center in the brain. As such, you actually reach them.
A quick mini lesson here on how this works. And as I remember, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Riedel came up with the idea that you could direct the liquids to different parts of your palate, which have got taste sensors. And by designing the glass in such a way that you could then change the appreciation for that liquid. And that was the genius of the design of the glass. So people might think Riedel wine glasses was different. It's long period of research to work out how do you get the wine or whatever it might be to the right part of the palate to get the most intense reaction, right? So that's the theory of it, right? So that, I guess, for a Japanese audience, they like technology, they love theory, I've found. So I can imagine that when you started talking about that, and they believe probably, I'm guessing, they probably believe they have more taste receptors in their palate than foreigners, because they've got some of these other particular views about the Japanese are different, and they have more sense of smell, or they've got more sense of taste, or, they have these ideas. They may be scientifically true, I don't know. But I can imagine that once you got to that point of explaining it, they could get the point. And if you're actually experiencing it, and I've been in your classes, so I know, you're right. It's like, wow, this is unbelievable, And I particularly remember the champagne flutes that you came up with recently, right? When I had that champagne and that flute, the one that you developed, I was just gobsmacked at how different the taste was. It was unbelievable. So I'm a true believer. Yeah. I've experienced it.
But don't forget, this is what we do. So we have worked for years and decades really on how to find the right explanations for what's actually physically happening with aroma and taste. So this is what we are familiar with. But to bring this to a new culture where wine was not really widely available and only drunk in restaurants, it was certainly a tough one in the early 90s and late 80s, early 90s.
And so you 3 of the years you were there, I think, then what happens then?
3 years I was in Maybach.
And basically you're on your own, I suppose.
I was on my own,
You're a single operator.
Yes.
You actually are leading the revolution here single-handedly. Okay, great.
Yes, and then I went to Sydney, Australia, to basically bring Riedel to almost 2/3 of the world from Sydney as a regional office. We established a regional office there because it didn't really matter where I was based in, and my wife's Australian, so she wanted to go back to study. So I made a proposal to the owner: why don't we do the same in other countries, and why don't we do it from Sydney? I could travel the globe in the south like this, in a circle, and I could go up and down in the Asia Pacific. So I was covering almost, I think, 26 different countries. I was starting the distribution, finding agents, making contracts, and getting their sales teams motivated.
You must have like 1 billion frequent flyer points from that period.
In those times, actually, there was not much frequent flyer.
But oh
no. This only came later.
Oh,
so that was early. That was mid-90s. So that was I think very important because I left Japan at that point. I was here for 7 years, and I was thinking I would maybe never come back to Japan. And it was then at that time that we had some structural challenges in Japan with the business, and it was a critical point for Riedel is like what will we do in Japan? And China was starting to emerge, and I actually was geared to go to live in Shanghai and maybe come back to Northeast Asia, and it's much easier to travel to Tokyo from Shanghai and support the business here.
So what year are we in now?
That was in 1989, 1899. Okay. That was the time when we Riedel and myself had to decide what we're going to do.
Sorry, this is 1999.
99, yes.
99, okay, all right.
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
There was negotiations with Maybach to make a joint venture, which unfortunately didn't work out in the end because it was just two different cultures, the corporate cultures. It was not necessarily being Japanese or European. It was more the size of the company. There was like an owner who basically can decide pretty much anything, versus a hierarchy where he talks to a president that pretty much knows nothing about what happens to our brand, to our little tiny brand within the big organization.
Yeah.
So it was at that time that I preferred actually to go to China. Because it would have been something new, and China was just up and coming, and Japan was close by, so I could maybe use both. But then it was a friend who actually made that move from Japan to China, and who was in Japan for a long time and went to China. He told me, Wolfgang, don't be stupid, go back to Japan.
Oh, why did he say that?
Well, he said, you know the place, you speak the language, you love the country. And China is for pirates.
Okay.
And you are not a pirate.
Right.
Go back.
Right.
So that's what I did. So I was very happy that he gave me that advice, and it was a great decision. I came back in the year 2000, and I'm here now for 21 years.
Yeah. And so when you come back to Japan, you then Riedel breaks off and sets up its own independent operation in Japan. You founded that.
Yes.
Right, from zero. Yes. This is your baby.
Kind of, yes. You could say that.
Yeah,
yes.
You started from zero, right? Yes. So, maybe you're sort of ahead of the curve there, because I remember around about that period of time in the 2000s, many brands who had gone into joint ventures with local distribution were buying back the control of the brands. They wanted to have more decision-making over how the brand was presented, the service delivery, how that was done. They have more of a culture drive there. And so that sort of was, you've seen that trend. And I think probably most of the big brands today, luxury brands, very few are going through a Japanese distributor anymore. They're all owned. Yes. So you were probably a bit of a pathfinder. I think you were probably a bit ahead of the timing there.
Well, it was a risk. Riedel didn't want to take the risk to go on its own. And it was a precondition to go 100% is for me to move back to Japan.
Right.
So because he knew I would know the country, would know the business there, and I could find the way. He felt.
So you had no staff?
I was the first staff.
You were the only staff.
I started in a Jetro office, a rental office with one secretary, and then we set up the warehouse. We set up we already had an existing business, so we started from there, the distribution, the office. And but 2-3 years later, we started to open a shop. We were offered by go back in time, the little subsidiary of the previous agent, invited us to open up a shop right here where we're
this location here. Oyame Chome, yeah.
Oyame Chome, and the owner wanted to retire and wanted to actually sort of set us up to maybe take over the company later, and this is what we did 2 years later.
Oh, really?
So we got an invitation to open up a shop and maybe make the little company more attractive for Riedel to take over, which we did.
But nice end of that story there. And you know, if you're a young Japanese person, you probably never heard of Riedel. You probably don't know about the history. Your parents are thinking you should join Mitsubishi Heavy or something, you know, brand name Japanese company. Don't join an unknown foreign company. So as a one-man band with your secretary at Jetro office there, you don't even have an office. You know, you don't even have anything. How do you convince Japanese people at that time to come on board? That must have been quite a good sales job there.
Very hard, because as you say, nobody knows the brand, nobody, you know, but you always start with what would be the angle into that person, and that the best angle that we always had was the history.
They love that.
No, well, they respect history.
Longevity.
So if you've been around for that long, you must have done something right. You have survived wars and pandemics and everything for 265 years, so you must kind of know what to do.
You've been in Japan for quite a long time by that time as well, right?
Yes.
So how many years by that time?
I had 7 years experience in Japan.
Not you personally. The Riedel glass is in Japan.
20 years.
20 years, right?
20
so
years,
it's
yes.
not only the 200 whatever it was by that time, 255, whatever it was, period of history. It's also a long period of time in Japan too, which is quite credible, isn't it?
We had a base.
Yeah.
We had a base, but to find people that work for the company was a different proposition altogether. It was very hard to convince people, and mostly what we ended up doing was referrals. So people that I mean, it started to snowball actually from that first secretary. She said, "Oh, I have a friend who might be good to do logistics."
Oh, really? She was your internal recruiter.
She was the recruiter.
She was terrific.
And I think we do that still quite a bit.
Okay.
Because you also, you have, it comes back to the main thing which is trust. If you have an introduction, you have a trusted relationship. You can build from there. You can go, theoretically could go back to them. This didn't work out. So was this really your first real leadership role? I mean, when you're in Sydney, I don't know if you were really leading people as much as you're traveling all the time by the sounds of it. That job was very international and was exposing me to global business in different countries, but it was more of a consulting role.
Right. So this is now you're in Japan, you're hiring people, you're the leader, you're leading them.
Yes.
What were some of the challenges for you as a leader, apart from the recruiting challenge, which is a big thing in itself, but you actually start to get people on board and you start to get things moving. What did you find was challenging as a leader?
I didn't have so much challenges with Japan as such, because I had three distinctly different companies I was working with.
Right.
So I had really an insight into what's happening in Japan.
Yep.
I was running the business here in some time. So it was more like general leadership challenges.
Yeah, like what were some of those?
To be comfortable to be the boss.
Right.
Very simple. I mean, until...
Is this the imposter syndrome of not being sure I should really be doing this? Is that the issue? Or?
Yes, I was, in a consultant role or in a promotion role, in an education role, you can be the nice guy for most of the day.
Yeah. It's a bit tiring, though. It does get a bit tiring being charming, though, doesn't it?
To have both, to have you also to look at different things in different ways is important as a leader, and then you learn to appreciate that and the importance of that.
And did you reflect back to Tsuji Ryoryaku? You talked about, the bull in the china shop type of thing, and, you without knowing it, you're sort of blowing things up with people probably. And did that sort of come back to you and think, yeah, actually that probably didn't go as well as it could have because I didn't know enough at that time. Now I know better with these people how to position myself as a leader. Did that help you at all?
That experience was invaluable, of course. But actually by that time I was maybe too nice of a leader. Oh. So I was maybe not strict enough. I was not regimented. I mean, how can I say? I had no problem with the soft side of things.
Right.
So it was more about operations, organization, vision. These were more the issues that I had to deal with in the beginning.
Right.
Whereas the Japanese leadership situation, I had plenty of watch and steal opportunities while I was here in Japan.
Good and bad, I'm sure.
Good and bad, yes.
Yeah, good and bad. So you've got the new team here, you're building the team up, and so, how to be the leader, how to set the vision, accountability, how to hold people responsible. So how did that go? How long did it take before you started to feel, okay, I've got this now, I'm more comfortable now?
Several years for sure. I think it was the pivotal point for me. I think was to be comfortable to be the boss. Once I had that in the bag, it was not easy, and I was still dealing with lots of business challenges. I mean, we were acquiring a company. I was new to actually lead teams and build a company and to work through those transitions of family size, village size, and to merge into a tribe very quickly because we also acquired another company. So I had 30 more people to deal with. So
here, this is a huge challenge. I mean, any time we look at mergers going on anywhere in the world, there's a whole library full of academic studies which basically say most mergers don't work. Very few of them are successful. And so here you are absorbing a family-run business of 24 individuals into your Austrian family business, really, isn't it? So there are some similarities there, but they've got a certain culture. You've got a Riedel culture. Yes. How did that go? How did you absorb those people into the Riedel way of doing things? That must have been very, very hard.
That was very interesting. I mean, again, it was possibly... I didn't find that to be too challenging because, again, I don't forget, I was 7 years, I was inside the engine rooms of Japanese companies. So I had a pretty good idea of how to navigate that part. It was more general leadership issues that any leader has around the world.
So you went from how many people to how many people?
Now we have. No,
at that time, right? You had a certain number you'd recruited.
I think we have 7 to 10 people plus 24.
So suddenly you go from you're running seven people. Now you're running 30
So
odd
from
people.
family to village, right away to tribe stage, it was quite tricky.
Yeah.
But it had its challenges, and we had to, especially when you know that certain staff would be very effective in a smaller size company, whereas for a different size, a different scale, you possibly need a different type of person to lead others and to manage things and to.
So did you have to move those people out?
Some, yes.
That can't be easy.
Was painful, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
particularly in Japan, where there's a expectation of mutual loyalty.
Yes.
I dedicate myself to the company therefore should protect me.
Yes.
And moving, as we all know too, legally, it's not straightforward to just decide that you want to rearrange people and move them out. There's a lot of legal bias in favour of the employee against the employer. Yes. So that must have been tricky.
Yes, that was. I remember a particular case that was probably the most capable, one of the most capable people we had in the whole history of this company, and she was extremely talented and extremely skillful with. I mean, she was like almost like the right hand. She was basically probably at one stage running the company on my behalf. But she was not able to lead, to be the leader of a larger team. She was not comfortable to delegate. She preferred to do everything herself. So we needed a different type of people
at scale.
A different scale. Yes.
Yeah, a smaller company should be fine.
Yes.
Yeah. And then from there, you're trying to get new people to merge in with the 7 or 8 people you've got. How did you build a vision for Riedel in Japan, engage them to be one team? How did you manage that?
Well, we did some workshops. We did some exercises off-site as well. We got some external coaching actually at one stage to help us with that process.
When you say off-site, are you talking,
another place, a neutral place?
No, I was thinking more like, you have these.
Could have been in a resort.
You may have been on them, sort of rope courses and falling backwards and people catching you.
No. It was in a classroom setting.
Okay.
It
So
was
it's
a
an
workshop.
Off-site at
We work on the mission,
Gotcha.
the vision, and things because.
Together.
Together, yes.
Right.
So that was the process that we took, and I think we actually at the moment we're just at the cross point at the crossroads of revisiting that whole process because things are changing around us, and we need to take a different approach perhaps as a in terms of our vision for the company in Japan. To have a bit more societal. Impact and environmental. I mean, as a company, we're extremely clean and green company.
Right.
So that's almost like a given for us. But I think especially during this time at the moment, we realize that not just because our category wine glasses is not doing too badly in these times, because people, and I'm not talking about alcoholism or I'm not talking about drinking not in moderation, but the drinking culture in Japan has a very high importance. Nomonication, is a word, a very popular word in Japan, a very important activity perhaps. Maybe at the moment less so, but it still is, because it opens people up and it has stress. It relieves their stress, or is important in different ways for lots of people in Japan.
So coming back to the engagement part, like you've got to engage them, you're having an off-site, you're crafting a vision, mission, these sorts of things. What are the things you're doing to engage people, to make them, come with you on this journey?
Personally, I think there's two. I found two tools, so to speak, very effective. One is to get to know them. I mean, probably one of the most important ones is to get to know your people.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do that?
And we have several tools that we use. We have kind of developed internally to hone in on their personalities and their personality. Although Japanese are considered very homogeneous society, people are very different. Inside.
Are you talking about things like DISC, those sorts of Myers-Briggs, these personality surveys, and putting you in categories?
Not something not that far,
okay.
but something that gives us an idea of what are their main motivational drivers, what are their change drivers,
and that's through just talking with them.
That is, we have a sheet where we can let them fill out, and it's like a control sheet,
Right.
two sheets, two pieces of paper where they fill things out, and if
Yep.
they
It gives
they're
you a
not, they're
read
not,
on
the
the
read
person.
on that, and I can ask, okay, if he was not writing it here, he would maybe try to create a different impression. And then, of course, we engage them on that basis, and we look at their values and their styles and the way they think, their sources of truth. We go quite deep in terms of that. So for
How
us,
do you discover their sources of truth? That sounds pretty deep. How do you get down that deep?
well, we give them 6 options and then ask them, please circle the 3 that are your main sources of truth.
Right. Okay.
And
So it's
then
one of the questions. Okay.
It's one of the questions.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
So we and it's
Is this survey coming from Riedel itself?
no,
Is this
this is something I put together
yourself? You created
for
it.
myself in a way. Yes. I mean.
Oh. So you're now branching off into the
No.
psychology part of things as well.
No. I did that in Australia. Actually, I got access to a lot of great information in that arena, and I self-studied like most things I did because I didn't have a formal business education, so I had to kind of learn everything myself.
But I don't think I've ever talked to too many CEOs who can tell me, yes, well, I did some self-study and I came up with my own method of working out a way of analysing people's personality styles to help me to lead them better. You're very unique in that sense. That's terrific.
Well, it's how I operate. So
that's
that's how.
impressive.
So, but at the same time, that's also one reason why I didn't end up well in school.
Oh,
So I always needed personal experience in order to find the reasons behind something, and then to study or then
Right.
to read up on it. So that's the disadvantage of that coin. The same
so
coin.
you've analysed the people. So you're getting that. Okay, so you know how somebody is, how they're framed.
Yes.
What then? Does that mean that you change your communication style with that person, or how you engage with them? What does it mean?
That could mean that, yes. Yeah. So we do. I mean, I'm not putting people into boxes, but I would know the people that are more active, that are more passive, and then you go down. They are more socializers, or they're more care type of people, or they are really like to be on their own and think about things, or the others that are more kind of managers or director types. So they're kind of dominated by different elements.
It's interesting, though, that you had to create that yourself, because Myers-Briggs is a well-known way of assessing people's types, and DISC is another one. In Dale Carnegie, we use one which puts people into 4 brackets, rough brackets of driver type, time is money, go, which is actually me. Expressive type, which is more people-oriented but assertive, typical salespeople.
Yes.
Or analytical type, who are not so assertive, but they like 3 decimal places of specificity. And then you have the amiable type, who likes people, but they're not assertive.
Yes.
So, we can arrange people broadly into those categories. And all that stuff sort of exists out there. I'm interested that you didn't try and just buy something like that and instead of having to invent it yourself.
No, I think if you look at all of these, they would have similar sources, and they would actually come from the same places. I mean, I think it was Empedocles, a Greek philosopher, who came up with the theory of elements, and if you overlap all those things, they all kind of match up, and you end up with 4 groups.
Yeah.
And then, but if you look at it in maybe a different way, in a more unique way, from a different perspective, you find some very interesting truths, and you don't need to have a degree to figure it all out, or a psychology degree. No. Because at the end of the day, people are people, and they're outgoing, or they're introverted. So I would say the interpersonal skill is maybe something I got from the hospitality industry, where you try to figure out what does this customer want, and what does it need. So I think I would naturally use that in my interaction with the people inside the company, and use it in different ways.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. I did Myers-Briggs, yes. Right? And it's like 16 boxes you get in the end. It's quite elaborate. It's elaborate. And I always thought, my brain can't hold 16 boxes in it at one moment. So in our system, you make two decisions.
Yes.
Is the person highly assertive or not particularly assertive? Right. That's like a horizontal plane. Right. That's one decision. The second decision is, are they people-oriented or are they outcome-oriented? That's the vertical plane. And just by making those two decisions about someone, you can roughly place them into a category which tells you, okay, this is a time is money, go, type of person. So you've got to be very direct with them. They're not going to be upset about it. They don't want their time to be wasted. They're prepared to listen exactly what you want. Whereas an amiable person might say, well, look, let's have a cup of tea, get to know each other a bit better. Yes. If they're an expressive type, don't kill them with detail. And, typical salespeople, right? They hate the paperwork. They don't want to do the CRM input because they feel it's a waste of time. They want to be with the clients, big picture. And then the analytical types, I say, they want 3 decimal places. Yes. And they want the proof, testimonials, the evidence, the whatever, right? The data. So when you know that, roughly where people sit, then your style of communication adjusts. And it sounds like you were doing that naturally.
Yes, but you got to, that's the key, I think, to translate what's on that page into a real connection with that human being. I think that's the challenge. I mean, they're all valid. They all probably have great insight.
There's no bad.
But to actually translate that into working with people is key. And when you work in that way, I think, especially with Japanese, who are so, passive by default, a lot of them, culturally, it is absolutely critical. I mean, I always look at them, especially those who are most, on the passive side. I would, the image that I have in my mind is a snail in a shell. And, a snail in a shell. I mean, you better don't make too many erratic movements in front of a snail in the shell, because it will withdraw right away if you look scary, or if that snail wouldn't trust you.
So straight into the comfort zone.
Into the comfort zone and stay in there and don't go out. And then, if one is to reach them in the first place, to have established the trust, which is really the only currency that is the beginning and the end of pretty much every human relation.
So how do you build trust?
Well, I go back to my gold medal, 85. I trusted my assistants. So in Austrian, in German, you have a word called Vertrauensvorschuss, which means it's like a trust advance. So you give trust first.
Just first.
Before you get trust, and especially a Japanese person. If you give them, if you pay trust forward, they will make sure that they will not disappoint you.
And that's an interesting point, isn't it? That I think as leaders, sometimes we miss these opportunities in communication because we are working on a Western concept of expectation that people do a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. And then the concept, though, of stimulating that loyalty by actually communicating to people, as opposed to just expecting that people will be loyal, to actually communicate to people to say, I'm trusting you with this because I know you're a serious person, you've got great sense of accountability, responsibility, and I know you're going to do your best, so I let you go for it. And to say that, which I think is often mentally, maybe we've got that in our mind, but it doesn't come out of the mouth because it's sort of accepted that's, of course you should be responsible, of course you should be accountable, and just go and do it. Whereas actually I think in Japan, telling people that is an important step that often, and I know I'm guilty of this too. I'm not talking about I'm Mr. Perfect over here. I'm guilty of this too. I forget to tell people that because I'm sort of expecting it. So, but it sounds like you are doing that.
Yeah. So you put that coin into that machine, the soda comes out.
Yeah.
So it's a real currency. That's really I find trust in anything because. They would look at us in different ways, and I think that's probably one of the main questions that we need to answer as foreigners here in Japan is how do they see us?
Yeah.
Not that what shall we do and how shall we approach it, but how do they see us and what do they expect from us? What can we add in terms of value to them?
And also you talked before about predictability and the snail in the shell, right? And so I think as a leader, being constant, consistent, doing what you say, setting something up and then seeing it through, all this predictability is important for building trust, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you everything that you do, if it is being consistent in, I think, consistency in your decision making. I mean, that predictability that you talk about is absolutely key because if they see you doing things consistently, like, for example, sometimes I would, especially when it comes to, come up with ideas or new, engagement, I will kill my own idea publicly.
Okay, talk about that a bit. That's interesting.
Because
killing your children here. How does this work?
Because I want to make sure that the least empowered person in the room can have a great idea and the best idea will win.
Right.
And it's not who has the idea.
So how do you kill your own idea in a situation like that?
Well, you are in a room like this with 20, 30 people and you just bring up an idea. Oh, that's a great idea. I think we should use that. And then 5 minutes later you kill it because somebody had said something better.
Right. So you're setting up a stalking horse, basically, of a starter idea.
I don't do it on purpose, but it's natural because it is who I am and how I would operate.
So your mind is thinking, here's a starting point, but I'm quite comfortable to have someone overtake that idea with a better idea.
Kill it.
It can come from anywhere, as opposed to, hey, listen, I started this business in Japan. Yeah. I'm the guru. Do what I say. I'm the source of all ideas. My ideas are best. Yes. If you do what I say, you'll all be fine. Yes. So on that point, that's interesting about innovation because that passivity, I can't even say it myself, passivity also comes into idea generation that often Japanese will be expecting, okay, Wolfgang's going to tell me what I need to do and I'll do it all perfectly, as opposed to thinking, what should I do? So how do you get them to think about what they should do? And it sounds like you've got some ideas there on how to make that happen. What do you do to make that work?
Well, you are in some way part of your job is to bring innovation to the company and bring to them and be the spark for their ideas.
Yeah, but often with powerful leaders, though, they are the sole source of the ideas, they're driving it.
Yes, there is such time when you need to be doing that, I think, because you have access to the information from outside, you have access to your head office, and you have access to other countries, and you are a fountain of ideas that can come into Japan, which is one of the reasons that you can add value to Japan, is to bring things in, to be a reference point for them. But you also, I think, within Japan, when it comes to localizing things, to localize products or processes, you need to be the fuel for their sparks.
Right, fuel for their spark. I like that.
You need to provide them with the resources and the support that they need to have their spark, because they have great ideas.
But also you have to be prepared to have their ideas overtake you, or to step back as they kill your own idea, which is a lot of leaders have got big egos, and you obviously have found there's more value in suppressing your ego and letting the good ideas come up.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the other thing is that I've done recently again is a 360 with myself.
A 360 with yourself. Boy, sorry, they're doing the 360 on you?
On me. So
okay,
I go to my immediate reports and I tell them, you tell me exactly what is good and what is bad.
Wow.
And
So they're doing it by
writing, and
so
then we discuss it.
It's
not anonymous. No, it's open.
Oh, it's open.
It's
so
open.
You know who's writing what.
I know.
But we talk about playing the trust forward.
Yes.
That is a big deal because, for Japanese to make any comment about their boss publicly is extremely difficult. Like, I'll give you an example. I've been working in Japan this time since 92, okay? So I've had leadership roles in a number of different organizations. I always say to my Japanese teams, look, I have a series of mistakes I'm making in Japanese, which I keep repeating because I don't realize they're mistakes. So if you hear me say something that's wrong, please tell me. So I'm still waiting since 92 for anyone to tell me I've ever made any mistakes in Japanese. They never tell you because you're the boss, right? They say, oh, yes, I'll do that. And they never do. So how do you get people to actually talk about things that you could do better openly? That's phenomenal.
Well, the prerequisite is trust. So if they know that you will never, ever, ever abuse that trust, they will give it to you. They will write it down. And it's confronting at times.
Yeah, how do you deal with the results?
Well, they have to be sure that that will never be held against them. And the honesty carries immunity.
Right. The honesty carries immunity. That's interesting. Why does the honesty carry immunity? Because in a lot of organizations, honesty carries execution and you're out.
Well, in this place, honesty does carry immunity because if it goes for communication, many things are said when there's too many glasses. And so I don't make a difference between those times and the Office 360 and I couldn't have done this 15 years ago. I couldn't have done this 10 years ago.
Right.
I think it's only now that there's a trust relationship with most of the people.
Your ability to build that trust with them is where you feel you can do it.
They actually will open up and feel safe.
Tell you.
Feel safe. Because I always see the snail. The snail feels safe coming out.
Yeah.
And they will.
Because we talk about, in Dale Carnegie, we talk about, we're a no criticism training organization. It doesn't mean we don't hold people accountable, but we don't criticize. We ask two questions. What is someone doing that is working? What's good? And how can they make it better? And we do that because we try to eliminate that critique element and to have people thinking going forward in a positive way. So that do better part has a critique element in it, but it's not as confronting, as being told, stop doing that, we hate you.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that they will mix up all kinds of things. I actually asked them for leadership, for example, but they will not just, they use organizational issues, they throw in operational issues into that bag. They mix it all up. And weirdly enough, it actually is, from their viewpoint, it's all the same.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. So they don't just see you as a leader that sits above the clouds and talks strategy and vision all day. It is because most of the things that really relate to their daily work are operational or organizational. So it's been interesting because many
and you've
mirrors.
Just done this? You've just done
I've just done this actually in preparation for this
today.
For this
Okay. How are the results?
Yeah, very interesting. Well, I got many different mirrors and I couldn't recognize myself in times. No, it was very invaluable. And the key thing is they know I will follow up on most things.
It's interesting, isn't it, how people see you. She retired from the company to go home and take care of her mother-in-law, who's quite aged and so stopped. But she had been my executive assistant in a previous 2 or 3 companies earlier. And then she took time off to have 2 boys. And then I got her come work for me again. And she didn't say it to me, but I heard it sort of around the grapevine that the person that I was when I worked sort of 2 companies before that, and then the person I'd become working in Dale Carnegie was a totally different person, right? And I thought, I couldn't see it necessarily because I didn't have that ability to reflect on myself. But when I heard that feedback, I thought, Well, that's probably right. I've probably learnt a bit in the last 10 years or so, or whatever it is, and I've probably matured a bit more and calmed down a bit more, calmed down a lot actually. Yeah. And so I probably have become better. But these things are difficult to swallow, aren't they? But they are ways of growing. And having listened to you now, I'm feeling a bit guilty that I haven't done that, and maybe I need to go and do one of those again myself, because it's been quite a while since I've had a 360 on myself.
Yes, no, it's absolutely enlightening, and the amazing thing is because the insights you get, and they will tell you exactly. It's almost like having a blueprint of what you need to do. It's like a to-do list for you. It's unbelievable because they will tell you, and sometimes they are complaining about something or pointing something out that is just a lack of information protocol. They just haven't got the memo. Yeah. We have it in the company. It's like if it's logistics or IT or different areas, we just have to put the oil where it squeaks and let them tell you. I think that's one of the things that is so amazing about Japan. If you give them permission, and you will never punish them for honesty.
Yeah, all upside.
They tell
There's a thing called the Johari window, which talks about one part of it is the leader blind spot in this Johari window of they know something about you, but you don't know that thing about you. It's blind spot to you. And this is where getting this type of feedback is important, because you just don't know. Yes. And, you might be doing something completely ignorant that this is having an impact on people in a negative way. And if you knew, you'd stop doing it. Yes. It's not that you're being rambunctious and aggressive about it. You just don't even know. So, and in Japan, it is quite difficult to have those blind spots revealed to you, because people are in their snail shell, not even peeking out, because that's quite a safe place to be. Yes. So how about innovation, though? You talked before about, the trust is a key element, and killing your own ideas. How do you have like scheduled sessions, innovation sessions? Do you have some sort of ongoing system of getting ideas? How does that work?
Yes, there is probably two parts to that. One is the thing. It really is a very, very innovative company. Mm-hmm. So a lot of ideas coming from Austria, but also we need to generate ideas from within, not just products, processes, everything. And we do it in different ways. So we do it in one-on-ones where we ask somebody. Sometimes I call somebody into my office and give him a subject and say, "Dozo."
Dozo means what?
Dozo.
What has he got to do with it?
Please start.
Give him a project or something, or start thinking about it.
Give him some time, some time to think about it, and then present something, present his ideas. We do strategy sessions with a bottle of wine.
One key point there that you've mentioned, though, is you're giving him time to think.
Yes.
And I know with a lot of, in the Western culture, decisions are taken at meetings. There's not that groundwork going on before the meeting, the nemoashi. It's taken at the meeting. And when you get to the meeting, you have to think on your feet. Yeah. You have to put your case forward, and we come to a decision right there and then. But I've found that Japanese are not preferring that system. No. If you ask someone on the spot in a meeting, what do you think? Yes. They're frozen. They're going, their brain is going, who's older than me in this room? Who joined the company before me in this room? Who is male, if I'm female, in this room? And there's so many things limiting them before they'll speak. And so people will then think, oh, they have no ideas because they didn't respond immediately they were asked, because they've got this confusion going on here. That's a very tricky thing, isn't it?
I would look at that as processing.
Yeah.
I think Japanese have to process, and they do process a lot more than we do. And we jump straight to the point and then deal with the problem, with the mess later.
Yeah.
Think later.
Yeah.
Do it first, go straight to the point and think about it later.
Yeah.
Whereas they have to process.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back to them being a very communitarian culture. consensus building, collaboration, from the rice field, and all that. So I think they must process. They need the time to process. They will not feel comfortable to speak up and to express something.
And also, there's that shyness about, what if I put my idea up and people laugh at it? Or what if I expose that my idea is not very good? Yes. If I stay quiet, people can assume I'm intelligent. Yes. If I say something that's not so smart, people will know that I'm not intelligent. So there's also that shyness, isn't there? Yes. But how do you get around that to get people to really contribute?
They're not shy in the right circumstances.
So what are those right circumstances?
For some, it's just a glass of wine.
Right.
Works very well.
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't have to be too many. When we also sometimes do even a strategy session with wine.
Oh, okay. You get the wine out.
What we do is we go to a restaurant.
Yeah.
And then we have a agenda. We have a subject.
Yeah.
We say we're gonna brainstorm about this and that. And then we have a few snacks to make sure that the alcohol absorption is not too quick.
Yep.
And then we strategize, and it's unbelievable that 2-glass window. The first 2 glasses, after 3 glasses, it's true. It's the creativity goes way down, but in that window.
Wow.
It works amazing because people just relax.
So you're bringing the nomication into the actual workplace. Like normally that takes place after work.
Well, we go to a restaurant. We go to a restaurant.
But what I'm getting at is like, the sort of go to the bar together and you just one-on-one, you're having a chat. But what you're doing is you're bringing it to the group, but bringing that freedom to express yourself through having something together, food and wine together. 2-glass limit. I have to remember that.
No, the dinner comes later.
Dinner's later.
Okay. It's like snacks, hors d'oeuvres, and wine and the champagne or whatever.
First
and that's we're working. Everybody's there with their notepads. So we're working and we're brainstorming, and it's on the job.
Right.
And then we have dinner.
Okay.
And then maybe some of the normal traditional communication happens, in the bar and getting more personal.
Yeah.
But this is about the job.
Oh, that's a really smart idea. I like that.
That works quite well. I mean, it's easier for us to do because it's part of our business.
Yes, that's right.
So we have to visit restaurants, and we have to engage people, our own staff with the product in an actual setting. So that's part of that.
Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. You've got a number of really innovative things there, Wolfgang. It's amazing. And, we've talked a lot about leadership, but is there anything I should have asked you about leadership which we've not got to yet, or I haven't asked you?
We talked about the fact that to look at what added value you bring to Japan and to them personally, because when you are a bridge, you're an interface to the headquarters. You can be a door opener for international companies. You can be a speed accelerator. You can be different things, but you got to know what is that added value that you bring to the company or to them personally. I think that's key, and to go outside of your normal scope.
What does that mean?
Meaning that you engage with Japan or Japanese company or Japanese institution in some way that is beyond the scope of the activities of your company. In our case, for example, it was the creation of the sake glasses. So we worked with Japanese brewers, which were not really our customers, but we worked together with them to create glasses specifically designed for Japanese sake.
So that's a great case study. Where did the spark of that idea come from? Because this was not in the Riedel lineup. I don't think someone sitting in Austria said, bingo, let's make a sake glass in Japan. I'll just get Wolfgang on the phone and get him on the job. So was that you? Was that one of your team? Where did that idea spark come from?
Those sparks, most of our sparks that we get come from customers or to staff, from the market, from customers.
Right.
And I still remember, the seminar we did. It was a wine glass seminar in the early 90s. And Japanese audience, and they were sitting there, and they said, "Wow, we know now how the shape of a glass can influence the appreciation of wine. It's all different from different glasses. What about sake?"
Wow. Okay, the market's telling you. Yeah.
What do you mean? What about sake? We don't know. That's not our field. That's not our area. We don't know sake. And it's a very culturally entrenched animal that we actually don't want to touch. So we were very hesitant in the beginning to actually even approach that, and it was their insistence from the markets, insistence from because they want to know.
Has it sold well? Has the sake glass sold well?
It's been the first one, Daiginjo glass, is out there for 20 years now.
Wow.
And the Junmai glass is now out for 2 years, both selling really well. But the interesting thing about that was it took us 8 years to create the second sake glass.
Wow. Because the research?
Was 170 different brewers involved. We did 42 different workshops. We had to stop once because the sake industry was not quite sure about what is Junmai. There was no consensus within the industry as to the flavor profile of that specific category. So we just had to back off. If we don't have a flavor target, we can't make a specific glass. So we backed off. And again, it's the pressure from the market kind of pushed us to finalize the project, and we're quite happy to have done it. And the insights and the relationships that were generated through that process outside of your normal scope, I think were absolutely amazing.
Very innovative. And so, anything else that we should have talked about?
Well, we've got a whole list here.
You've got your notes there. You're very well prepared. Excellent.
Haven't looked at them. But,
we'd probably cover them anyway.
Yes. But I mean, there is a. I mean, if you're always asking, what are the three things that you would give to somebody?
Some advice. Yeah. Well, if someone's going to turn up in Japan, go to Japan. You're going to run the Japan operation. Away you go. What would be some advice you'd give to someone doing that?
No. That I would. Imagine yourself that you never leave Japan.
Right.
What would you do?
Right. Take a long-term rather than short-term.
It doesn't matter if you're here for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, and you learn Japanese. You will learn the language. You'll immerse yourself in the culture, and you'll travel around to Japan to see the place, and that will give you so much respect from so many brownie points to begin with, and you don't even have to speak Japanese. You just put a lot of effort in and let everybody see it, and they will love you for it. Don't be an elephant in a porcelain shop. That would be another one, because you can live another day if you don't. You will not get a mark, and
so that means to hasten slowly. Does that be conservative? Is that what it means? Don't be in a rush.
No, to definitely not to rush into anything. Really, and consider always that everything you do has implications.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
Everything you do, and maybe less so what you say. They will always watch what you do rather than what you say.
Yeah.
And everything has implications, and some of it has consequences to somebody around, to the community, to whoever whoever else is involved. And that's, I think, would be the number one. Less so today, perhaps, important as it was in my time. Because today, people can look at your programs and they can get all the insights in terms of knowing what not to do. And I think also to if you're operating here for the first time and you want to get trust quickly and credibility quickly, you start with making a successful snowball before you make the ice castle.
Snowball first, ice castle
first,
later.
Later. And then you make a snowman and make small wins, easy wins. They see, oh, wow, he can do that. He can do that. So that's also a very good way to build trust and credibility quickly, because this is really what you need as a leader in Japan, is trust and respect.
Any other points?
What else have I not covered?
You're a gold mine, by the way, Wolfgang. You're an absolute gold mine.
All the other things are, I mean, the usual suspects. You know, you be authentic, to be yourself. I think some people have mentioned this, that you're coming in as a colonizer and you want to change Japan, and then and I went through the same transitions, you know, over the last 30 years. You know, coming in, you know, want to tell them what to do, and then you you realize that didn't work, and then you go
often happens though. You're sort of G'd up by headquarters, you know, who says things like, "Right, Wolfgang, you got to go into Japan and turn that baby around. You know, it's not going the right direction. We're not seeing the numbers. Your job, and we're expecting results. Get in there." So people have got that in their head when they jump on the plane to come here, and so there's something going on there that may not actually work.
Yes, that's a very tough call.
Yeah.
I mean, to follow that direction. I mean, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
That's a really big challenge.
Actually, I wrote my second book was Japan Business Mastery, and the last chapter I devoted to the cause of people who are going to be sent to Japan. And in that chapter, I said, you have to negotiate some things before you take the post. Because if you don't, you're going to get caught in the jaws of hell here between the Japanese resisting and the headquarters driving you, and you won't be effective. You'll get fired, or you'll be, you know, career destroyer. But if you organise things before you go, you'll have a better chance of success, and buy yourself some margin. Because if you don't, it's going to be hard. So I understand that point very well. Well, you know, I have really enjoyed our chat today, Wolfgang. We could go on for hours, I can tell, but you're a busy man. You're running the Riedel empire here, and I really, if people have not tried Riedel glasses and tried the difference, I'm a fan. I've got a whole bunch of them at home, I can tell you. Bought everything you can imagine I've got there. And in fact, I'm going to pick up the champagne flutes today, if that's okay, after we finish.
Great.
Because that's the one thing I haven't had a chance to get around to buying, so I want to get that. But it's been really great. Thank you very much for your generosity and for setting up a beautiful room with the lighting and everything. That's fantastic. It's been fascinating. And we learned so much today. You really brought a lot of interesting insights, and the way you term them, phrase them, I always found that very fascinating too. When I get the transcript, I'm going to really be studying this very, very carefully. So thank you, Wolfgang. Thank you. And please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.